Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 3.8. So, if you missed 3.7, what we are doing to do virtual notes is I'm pretty much going to assign you guys an assignment, and then I'm going to do some of the problems with you to explain how to do it. Today's lesson is just talking about the different forms of a linear equation that we've talked about, which are these three. So, you've got y equals mx plus b, the one where x and y are on the same side and it equals a whole number. And this last one is point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And point slope form is probably the most complicated. And what we're going to do is identify the important pieces of each one. So for example, on y equals mx plus b, m is your slope. So in this equation, your slope is 5. And then for your y-intercept, that's the little number at the end, or b, that would be 4. And what this tells us is we would start our graph at 4 on the y-axis and go up 5 over 1. Some of you have been automatically making your slope a fraction like this. And that's fine with me because that's going to make it easier for you to graph. Then, if you have standard form like this is the one where we used to cross out the y's because we made them 0, like this. And then we have 5x equals 30. Well, 5 times what number equals 30? 6. Then you would do the same thing but for y, okay? So instead of covering up the x, I would cover up the y, I'd cover up the x. So whatever variable you have left is the one that you're looking for. So if this one is 3y equals 30, we would divide by 3 on both sides, and y would end up being 10. Okay, and then on the very last one, the point slope form, this one gets a little bit complicated because if you notice, x1 is being subtracted. So the x value of the point is sort of going to always be the opposite, or is going to always be the opposite. So basically, the number we would have to subtract here in order to make this plus 5 would be negative 5, which is the opposite of what we talked about last week, where we had the double negative and we turned it into a positive. Okay, just realize that the only reason why that positive is there is because this minus turned into a positive because it was negative 5. And then we have our y value from over on the left. Y minus y1 is y minus 11. So 11 is the number being subtracted there. And there you have your point. Your slope is just the number out front of the parentheses, which is 2. And that's it. I'm going to do one more row with you guys so that you understand it fully, but this should start becoming pretty easy for you since we've talked about all of these before. So on this one, your slope is the number in front of x, which is 3/4. Your y-intercept is the number at the end, which, be careful, it's not 8, it's negative 8. And then over here, this is the one where you cross out your y's for a second, and this would leave you with 3x equals negative 24. So you divide by 3 on both sides, and x would end up being negative 8. And then you would do the same thing for y, where you would cross out the x's, like this, and you would divide by 8 on both sides. And negative 24 divided by 8 is negative 3. And then over here, on the last one, we need our point. So the x part of the point comes from this part right here, x1, and the number being subtracted there is a 4. So in your point, it's going to be 4, comma, and then you do the same thing but for your y value. So it's the number being subtracted, and since it turned into a plus 6, that means you had to have subtracted negative 6. Okay, Okay, it is also easier just to think about it this way. It's going to be the number next to x, but the opposite. Okay, so this number is kind of coming over here, but changes signs, and this one comes down here, but changes signs. That's probably the most complicated part of this entire assignment, or of any line. And then your slope is the number in front of the parentheses, which in this case is negative 2/3. Okay? Then what you're going to do is use that information to graph the line. So for example, on my y equals mx plus b, it tells you your slope and your y-intercept. The slope is negative 1/2, and the y-intercept is 2. So that means I'm going to take one of my points and put it on the y-axis at 2. And I'm going to take the other point and I'm going to go down 1 over 2. Because that's how you make a slope of negative 1 over 2. And then you're going to put a point or a line through those 2 points. Okay? And you just drag the line over. You can move the blue dots. I'm going to put one next to this point and one next to this point. And then it bothers me when I can't see the arrow, so I'm going to move this one down a little bit. But you don't have to necessarily do that. And there you have your line. Moving on to the next one in the middle, this is ax plus by equals c. Whenever you have one that looks like this with x and y on the same side, this is the one where you're going to want to find the intercepts by crossing out the other letter. So I have 8x equals negative 24. I would divide by 8 on both sides. Negative 24 divided by 8 is negative 3. And that is my x-intercept since x is the variable that was left over. Then I'm going to do the same thing, but cross out my x's and have just my y's left. Now be careful because there's a negative with that 6. So I'm going to divide by negative 6 on both sides. And negative 24 divided by negative 6 is positive 4. And that's my y-intercept since y is the variable that's left. And then I'm going to take my point and drag it to negative 3 on the x-axis and 4 on the y-axis and make a line that goes through them. So I'm going to drag my line up here, put one of my blue dots on the other side of this line, or this dot, and the other point on the other side of the top dot, like that, so that it goes through. And there you have it. On the third one, it gives you a point and a slope because this is called point-slope form. The point is going to be the opposite of the x part, which will be negative 4, comma, the opposite of the y part, which will be positive 3. And then the slope, which goes in front of the parentheses, is 2. So then I'm going to go put a point at negative 4, 3, which is left 4 up 3. And the slope is 2. Some of you have been writing that as 2 over 1. That's fine with me, because what you're going to do is go up 2 over 1 to the right, and then make a line that goes through those points. Bada bing, bada boom. And you're done. Okay? On the last few slides, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a hint here. You're going to match each form, so the name of the form is right here, to its equation. So for example, this one is in slope-intercept form because you have the slope and the intercept. This one is trying to tell you what the slope and the intercept are. So find the slope, that's the 2/3 in front. This is the slope right here. And the 2 is the y-intercept. So those are the two pieces of information that this graph tells you to. Fine. Okay, so you're going to fill in all of this table, and then over here, the y-intercept can be found on, well, obviously slope-intercept, because it's got the word intercept in it. And then the other one that tells you the intercepts, and it gives you the x-intercept and the y-intercept, is standard form. And then the slope, well, both of these have the word slope in them, so guess what? These two are going to go right there.